to come and share from their lives. And they're going to share a little bit about what their life was like and their relationship was like before they knew the Lord, and then what's happened and how God has really worked powerfully. And I think this is going to be personal testimony that's really going to encourage us, because we need vision, we need hope, we need to understand. The last point that Greg made was so powerful. There's a lot, even in the world, there's a lot of good books that are written by worldly people who have rotten marriages, because they do understand some of the mechanics of the differences in men and women and what makes a great relationship. The problem is they don't have God in their life, so they're throwing away money, and their marriages are not great, and they're not changing because the Lord isn't there. But when the Lord is there, tremendous things can happen. So I hope from both these couples, you'll catch a vision there. First, we're going to have Al and Stephanie Brown come. Amen. You guys go ahead and stand up and get ready. Then we're going to have after them Kerry and Cheri Fortner. Amen. So let's all stand. We'll sing a couple of verses of a song before Al and Stephanie come, then a couple of verses of a song before Kerry and Cheri come. Let's put our heart into this and get ready to listen to what the Lord has to share with us.
Good morning. I want to thank you all for allowing us to share what our marriage was like before we became Christians. Basically, Al and I have been married for 7 years, almost 8 years, and we were married a year after our first child was born. The first couple of years of our marriage was really great. We did all the family things, visited relatives, took vacations, and our second child was born. Basically, the third and fourth year of our marriage began to get a little rocky. And as I referred to many of Al's friends, his little NBA player friends, kind of like ruined our marriage in a sense. But, I kind of blamed everyone but myself. I realized that a lot of our failure in our marriage had a lot to do with me and the bitterness I had toward my husband, and the ungratefulness and the rage that built up in our relationship. So going on into our fourth and fifth year, Al had lost his job. And I didn't have much pity on him at that time because he had hurt me so much. And staying out late at night with his little NBA friends. And it really... So I mean, they were really respectful to me, and again, I still had to blame somebody, and it was them. It wasn't Al, it wasn't me, it was them. But in any case, I realized that I was becoming not such a great wife, and that I was very disrespectful to my husband, said a lot of mean things to him. And a lot of rage just built up in my heart, and there was a lack of love, a loss of love, and it was just building. So we went on into our marriage, just kind of living day by day, not really having a relationship. But in reality, our marriage was soon going to end. It was just going to happen. I lost hope, I lost faith, and it just was not going to be the marriage I thought it was going to be in the beginning, which was live happily ever after. In reality, God knew that I really wanted to have a great marriage, that I really wanted our marriage to last, and that I didn't want to break up our family, that I didn't want to leave my husband, that I really wanted to have a great family and leave, have our kids grow up in a family household. But in any case, God knew that, and He led me to a former classmate at Cal Poly Pomona. She invited me to church, and from there, there were a couple women that asked me to study the Bible. I studied the Bible, and it was at that time that I realized that I was the major problem in our marriage, that I had such rage in my heart and committed such sin of ungratefulness and bitterness that contributed to our marriage failing. So in reality, I realized that it was also hurting God, and that it was something that didn't make God happy about me. So I immediately wanted to change, and I did. I expressed to my husband that I was sorry, that I apologized to him for being ungrateful to me, and I basically just instantly changed because I wanted to please God, and I wanted to change my heart, and I wanted to do what was right, and I knew that would be the beginning of rebuilding our marriage. If I took the first step, that perhaps that would make a difference since I had contributed to it. In reality, Al saw my heart change, and he began to study the Bible, which was a really great thing. It was, and but God does things in such a strategic way, because He knows the individuals that He's working with. So, in reality, once Al finalized, studying the Bible and made a decision that he was going to become a Christian, he realized that there were some things that he had to tell me first. And basically Al came to me and said to me that he was an adulteress. And I thought, oh my God, this is not a good thing. But in reality, I was really surprised in myself that I was able to digest it in such a way that I did. And that was a really good sign for me, because I realized that God had truly been working in my heart, and He was really beginning to work our marriage out. And I knew in Al's heart that he was not happy about that, but at the same time, it was something that he had to tell me. And I just instantly digested, and I forgave him, and I loved him for just stepping out and making that confession so that we can go on and rebuild our marriage and raise a great family. So I basically want to just say that God is truly good. He's been great in our marriage. We don't have a perfect marriage by all means, but the one great thing I'm so grateful for is that we have leaders in the church that we can reach out to and get help, just a phone call away, and that's a good thing, because in the world, we reached out to our friends that gave us ungodly advice, and if I would have listened to them, I would have probably been somewhere else, and so I'm just grateful that God, continued to just lead me and guide me and keep me in a path that I just wouldn't totally destroy my life. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to have shared that with you, and I'll turn it over to my husband.
Good morning. I think Stephanie pretty well wrapped everything up, so thank you. Well, for me, as Stephanie said, at the beginning, we met each other. We had a baby out of marriage, and I was a pretty wild guy at the time, running around with some buddies of mine that played basketball, and little guys. And our everyday schedule was just going to work out in the daytime and going out to the clubs at night, getting drunk and getting high and chasing women, and just, no discipline. And I met Stephanie, and she was different. So she became pregnant at the time. My buddy was playing for the Lakers. He got traded to Atlanta Hawks that summer. So I had a decision to make. Do I want to stay with Stephanie or go to Atlanta with my buddy? And being the coward that I was at the time, I decided to go to Atlanta. And it just kind of bothered me a lot, because when I was a kid, my parents, they divorced when I was a little guy. My father kind of ran out on my mother. So all the time I was in Atlanta, every day it was just eating away at me. Man, I need to go back to L.A. And my buddy was, it was like a tug of war. No, stay here, man, stay here. You can see her in the summertime when you go back. So taking his advice, I stayed in Atlanta. And at the end of the season, I decided to come back to L.A. And instead of moving back in with him, I was staying with him before I moved in with Stephanie. And during the summer, it was a tug of war to hang out with the guys and be with Stephanie and the baby. And once the season started, he went back to Atlanta. Me and Stephanie's relationship, became stronger. And in January of the following year, we got married. And things were going great until the summer came around again, and he came home. And it was back to the little NBA guy. Yeah. And it was back to the same routine: hanging out, going out, partying, and getting involved with sexual immorality and just drugs and alcohol. And one day, one thing that really touched me one morning was I stayed out all night long. We drank a bottle of tequila and playing dominoes and using drugs. And I came home at 7 in the morning, and Stephanie was crying. She had to be to work at 8, and she was crying, and it really hit home with me. I'm like, man, what am I doing? You know, I'm just being selfish, really. You know, I wouldn't think about her and the baby. And I started going to church in Pasadena, and but I wasn't getting the spiritual guidance that I needed. And so what happened, one day Stephanie met the sister Carol Polly, as she mentioned, and some of the sisters from the church started studying the Bible with Stephanie, and I was like, these sisters coming over every night or late at night, what are they talking about? What's going on here? So I would, yeah, that's right. So what I would do, I would bring drinks to them and just to sneak up in and try to listen to what they were saying, and they were so happy, and they were, you know, having a great time. So Stephanie invited me to church, and I went down to the downtown Hyatt one night, and Steve Sandin was preaching that night. And man, Steve's a great guy, man. I really enjoyed myself. So I came back the following Sunday, and I met Bill Throne. Man, everybody who knows Bill, he's a special guy. So he came up to me, gave me a card. I'm like, what's this guy giving me a card, man? What's on this card? It said Bill Throne, LA Church of Christ, and his phone number on it. I'm like, wow, that's the first time a guy gave me a card without some kind of status on it. You know, everybody in LA has a card. You know, I'm something. So I started studying the Bible with Bill and Don White and Chris Wright. And I became a disciple last year in October 9th, 1994. And since then, you know, our marriage has changed a lot. You know, it's not perfect, as Stephanie mentioned, but we have people in church now. I have some real great friendships here that I developed. Harvey and Kelly has been there for us, and Lynn and Curtis have really helped us out. So we get advice now, and it really helps us over the bumps. We still have a lot of bumps, and we're working on it, but. But one thing, every night I pray, you know, I thank the Lord for the LA Church of Christ.
Yeah.
You know, it's really made a difference in our lives, and I think without the LA Church of Christ, we'd probably be divorced now. I really think so, and it just gives us hope now. You know, we have a purpose now, we have a focus, we're working together, and it really makes a difference in the marriage to have that focus and purpose. And I know this retreat has been great for us, and I hope it helps everyone as much as it's helped us. And I just want to say to the visitors here today, you know, study the Bible with the person that brought you, and it really will make a difference, and it really helped your marriage like it helped us. And just thanks a lot.
I just wanted to start out by just telling you a little bit about my background. I grew up here in LA, and I grew up in a very religious family, very traditional Christian family, and basically your middle-class family. We all loved each other, and went off to a Christian college, and then was single for 2.5 years before I met Kerry. And during that whole time, it was really funny. A lot of my life has been spent in just a lot of deceit. I had my Christian friends, and I had my friends that I was, you know, real with, the real me. You know, I had kind of this little split life. I would be all nice and good with my Christian friends, then I'd go out with my other friends and I'd party. And even a lot when Kerry and I met each other, there was still a lot of deceit that even ran between us. But I'd had a couple of immoral relationships before I met Kerry, and I was really kind of proud of myself. This kind of tells you my being such a hypocrite, and also just how out of touch I was with myself. I was kind of proud because we weren't immoral until we got engaged, and I felt pretty, you know, I felt pretty good about myself on that we had waited that long, you know. And I really was just kind of really out of touch with just myself. You know, we got married, and really Kerry and I married each other as best friends. We were really good friends in college. We left college and kind of went our separate ways, but we came back and really built a long-distance friendship for 6 hours away that our whole dating and courtship life was. And so we really were able to spend a lot of time building a friendship. We got married, and the first 2 years were great. I mean, things would happen, and I would go, gee, you know, that would normally bug me, but gosh, I handled that well, and it's not bothering me. And so the first year was great, and the second year would be like, oh, that kind of bugged me, but hey, we're doing good, you know. We love each other. And then 3, 4, and 5 came, and it was just like down from there. And I think the thing when I really reflect back on that years kind of 3, 4, and 5 was just really a lot of selfishness that came out in my heart, a lot of bitterness, a lot of anger, because Kerry and I would have conflicts, and neither one of us was willing to be wrong, especially me. I always had to win. I always had to have the last word. I was very angry at times. So one time I flipped a table on Kerry. It was a card table that had all these papers for taxes. And we had a fight, and I wanted him to see how angry I was. So I took the card table and I just flipped it, and all the papers went up in the air, and I left the room and I slammed the door. And you know, I think back on those times, and I would walk away so justified. I would be like, you know, he deserved it. He needs to know how mad he made me. It was really funny because Kerry and I really filled up. You know, you'd look at us on the outside and you'd think, gosh, they have such a great marriage. You know, our friends would tell us, oh, we just want to have a marriage like you guys. And I'd be like, one. And it was really funny because I had absolutely no respect for Kerry. I honestly thought I was better than him. I thought I was smarter than him. Kerry would start talking in social situations, and I'd be like, going, come on, I know they can see how stupid this is. It's really, you know, we kind of chuckle about it, but it's really sad just how prideful I was and how disrespectful I was, how selfish I was, and how hateful I was. And it was really interesting. Kerry and I started going to church. Actually, Dave Pitts, where is he? They were over here. There they are. Dave Pitts would call us. We found out that we went to college with Dave, and Dave would call us like periodically every 6 to 8 months, and we lived about an hour and a half away. He lived in San Francisco, we lived in Stockton. He kept inviting us to come to church, and we were like, sure, we'd love to, but then we kept going, hour and a half, you know, that's a long way. Well, what happened was in Sacramento, a church was planted there, so we ended up, that didn't seem so far, and we finally ended up going to church there. And Kerry and I started studying the Bible. And it was really sad. My heart was so hard that I would just look at the Bible and go, yeah, that's what it says, but nothing would penetrate. And it really took God humbling me. I found out in studying the Bible that Kerry had an affair about 10 months earlier. And I never thought Kerry looked at other women. And it was really a blow to me. And it was really interesting because the night that we sat down with some friends of ours and talked, you know, he confessed it to me, we talked about it, I didn't leave. I didn't get up and get angry and say, I'm the victim. I sat and I listened, and I started to think about what I had done. And a friend of mine, she sat down with me, Kerry, and he had left the room for a minute, and she sat down and she said, you know, Cheri, you've got to see that you're a lot of the reason why this has happened. And inside of me, I'm like going, but wait a second, I'm the victim. And I had to really think about it. And I really saw that my years of criticalness, him never being able to please me, my years of selfishness, of anger, these things had destroyed our love and our friendship. And when you would take that one little incident and put it all by itself, you would think, it was not that big a deal, or you think, hey, I'm justified because I'm right. But these things actually destroyed our marriage, and my husband had an affair on me, and I really had to take responsibility for that because I was the reason. I did everything. You know, he has to take responsibility for his part, but I pushed him there. I did everything but, you know, invite him to do it because he didn't get respect and love and encouragement from me. He had to get it someplace else. And that was a big pill to swallow. You know, Kerry and I became Christians, amen, in November, so there is a happy ending. And the thing that really changed about our relationship was forgiveness and trust. I really learned how to trust Kerry and to forgive him and for him to forgive me. because he had a lot to forgive from me because I'd really hurt him in a lot of ways. To really learn how to resolve our conflicts, to not give in to anger, rage, but to really be able to talk and communicate. But really, I come to you today not from a standpoint of, gee, we've done it all really well, and from a standpoint of strength, but really from a standpoint of weakness, because Kerry and I have been disciples for 5 years, and the last year and a half has been really hard. Kerry lost his job when I was 8 months pregnant with Harrison. And, you're sitting there thinking, insurance, mortgage, all these things come across your mind. As a result of that, we decided to go into a lawsuit. And that probably put me in more of a tailspin, because all I could hear was the cash register going ching ching, ching ching. Every time you say lawsuit, I went, But it was really funny because through all of this, of not having money to pay our bills and basically being very successful and having a good income and having it taken away, everything taken away, wondering, are we going to keep our car? Are we not going to keep our car? What's going to happen here? And really just sitting there and God revealing my heart, revealing that in the couple years that I'd become a Christian, I had let things seep back in. I'd become selfish again. I was talking with Kelly last night about just not being willing to do what I was asking other people to do, not giving of my heart, not serving like I needed to serve, not being 100% committed to God. Let a lot of worldliness creep back in. I got a lot of security from my house, my things, being comfortable, being comfortable in just my day-to-day life. Being a mom, you can sit back and be just fine going, but I'm raising 2 little kids. But just really just wanting to be comfortable and not wanting to be inconvenienced. And I think just really becoming numb to God. And just really quickly in closing, Kerry and I went to see, through his job, we went to see Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And get that one out. And just this last Thursday and Tuesday, Lana had actually spoken about Joseph. And the thing that I've really learned a lot in this last year, and it's really even come to me in the last 2 weeks, is that Joseph had to have gotten down when he was in the cistern in the desert. It was probably pretty darn hot in there. He had to have been down when he was in jail. I've never been in jail, but I'm sure it's a horrible place. And just seeing the reenactment of this, I was like, ooh, this would be very dark. But it's not that things didn't happen to Joseph, that his life was always rosy. It was how he dealt with it. And the fact that he never stopped fighting. And there'd be many times in the last even year and a half, I've just wanted to stop. But then I think, what am I going to stop for? There's nothing else out there but God. And I think that that's what I come to you with today, is that things haven't been awesome at home. Things haven't been easy at home, but we've just got to fight to be faithful. And Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. And I truly believe that. And further on, it just says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall it be trouble, hardship, persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? Nothing's going to separate me from God. And it's been a heck of a year and a half, and I'm sorry I spoke over time, but it's been awesome because I really have got restored in my heart what's really important. And I am a fighter, and I'm not going to give up.
You'll have to forgive me if I do become emotional, because I can tell you as I stand before you now, and Sherry's told you a lot about the things that have happened. I am more grateful for my relationship with God. I'm more grateful for my family. I'm especially grateful to God because He disciplines those He loves.
That's right.
And without this discipline, I probably would not be here. And I've learned to become very grateful for that discipline.
Amen.
But in talking about my life, before I became a Christian, I grew up in a fairly religious type home. I really never had much to do with it. I really didn't care for it. I kind of went to church and slept just so my mother wouldn't cry when I was, laying in bed after, being out on the weekend drunk the whole time. Then I went to college, the same college that Cheri went to, Dave went to, and life was pretty much the same way there also. A very immoral type life. You name it, Galatians 5:19, I've been involved in it. And I played football. I was a very violent person. I loved violence. It was something that I really thrived on. And I think that was a part of a lot of the type of attitude or the kind of life that I led. I was very angry. Seemed to think that anytime things didn't go right, I was a victim. But anyway, Cheri and I had met there, and we were good friends. I got married right out of college, and my wife left me for another man a couple years after that. And then Cheri and I were married, and we were best friends. Things were, I was just so grateful to have her, a friendship, because I had lost so much in my first marriage. And we had a great time together. We talked together. I mean, we used to spend a lot of time just going to the hot tub together and just having a great time. And then, it's like she said, I meant talking, because that's something that seemed to stop during year 2, 3, 4, 5. The career was moving on. I'd been able to do the things that I'd always dreamed of. I was coaching Division I football. My goal in life was to break Bear Bryant's record as a winning coach. I'm serious. I was definitely a workaholic, and I became very selfish in those goals that I had. And I'll never forget what came along with the Division I coaching was pressure. I'll never forget the first day on the field being what I would call dog cussed by the head coach in front of my kids. And I'll never forget stopping at the liquor store and taking a pint of gin and drinking before I got home. And that becoming a very constant thing to deal with the pressure that I was under. And just that kind of character, that's the kind of person I was developing into. And with the drinking came a lot of rage, more and more sin, more and more deviant type behavior. And I would definitely say by the time that we were met, I was pretty broken from the standpoint that we'd all gotten fired at the coaching job that I was at, and I think at that point in time I realized deep inside that I had a problem with the drinking also. And drugs were to come into play again soon after that. But anyway, we met. Dave had invited us, and I really had no idea what I was getting into. But the first day that I walked into the church, I'd been to a lot of churches, I just turned myself in. I just went right up front, and I said, one thing that my mother taught me was to have a fear for God. And I had a great fear. I had a real fear that I really believed that with all my heart and soul that there's an eternity. And that I would pay for the things that I had done and been. And, of course, inside me I was hiding in a moral relationship that I'd had, an affair with my wife. But, we began to study the Bible. And there's one key point that I'm going to bring it home here, but I really want you to remember is I developed a great relationship with Lee Deloney. And I think we can teach our children to be sensitive, to be open. I think we've learned it. I think we can change the next generation. But Lee helped me to be open. I talked about Lee. I showed my emotions. I think, I cried again. I started to laugh again. But that's the thing that I want to really emphasize to you, because things were great even in the Christian life for a couple years. But then there were some changes, and I drew away. I didn't get back in there and really let the people that were discipling me know who I really was. And, I moved back into the worldliness, the goals. I'm a stockbroker now. To be number one in the office, to be recognized by the firm. And a lot of, even the other sin, just the lustfulness and things of that nature, and drinking, slipped back into my Christian life. And it's really funny because I know God put Dave on this earth for me. And, a lot of you heard Gary Booker talk last Sunday. We were out of town on business, but, we should all have a relationship like that.
Yeah.
And Dave has been the person for me. And it wasn't, hey, how you doing? Dave was just my friend. He'd take me and we'd go drink coffee. And finally one day I just broke down. I just told him what was really going on, what had really gone on in my life for the past year and a half. And I think in going back to what I started with, of being very grateful for what God has done, I look at, losing a great job, and actually being taken away from wrongfully. But I know now, and I truly believe it was God. God did that to save my soul. God did that to where I could really understand the verse in the Bible that says, you should think of other people as being better than yourself. You see, I thought I was better than other people. You say, that's not the case. God, that's humility. And I'm just so grateful for all the discipling that we've got in our marriage. I can truly say that our marriage is probably better than it's ever been, in every way, shape, and form. But to remember that when the discipling comes, or when the discipline in your life comes from God, remember what the Bible says, that God says that He disciplines those that He loves. And you can remember that, just like as you have children, you'll see that too. You must discipline if you love them. But I really appreciate getting a chance to speak, and it's been a great seminar, and thanks a lot.